Welcome everyone to the EED webinar on February 26th, The Art of Designing Powerful Questions. This is webinar number 4 of our series in 2020. So we have a couple people joining us, and maybe a couple others will join if they're running late, but we've got enough. We got a lot to cover on this webinar. So we were talking a little bit earlier before we started the recording why I chose this as a topic. Typically when we talk about powerful questions, we think automatically of coaching. Coaching uses powerful questions a lot. What I can say in my experience is sometimes they get overused. And what EED does is a balance between naming what's happening in the moment and then asking questions to further expand and explore what's happening in the moment. So, and some of you here were saying, yeah, you got to be listening and observing to what's happening first before you can even put a question out there, which is true. So EED works in a balance between articulate and then invite response. And the way you invite response is by asking questions. The other thing is that I feel a lot of people are asking questions just sort of like they're pulling it out of their hat. You know, like some people complain it feels random, that it doesn't feel very intentional. And so I want to clean that up, that you can be very intentional with your questions. And in fact, what makes a question powerful is not one question, but a series of questions. It's how you follow up your questions through what response you get. That's what's going to make it even more powerful. So we're going to look at combinations of questions and sequences of questions, okay, that will match your intention and match what's happening in the moment. And lastly, what I'll say is this isn't just for coaches, because this applies to leadership, facilitation, training, consulting, healing. Everybody in these professions are asking questions in order to shape an experience, all right? It's through questions that we can shape a moment, an experience, and then guide a process of transformation. Do you guys have any questions or comments there, just on what I've said here? Anything to add?
Yeah, I remember that some years ago when you've been to Bucharest and that ICF conference,
Mm-hmm.
you told us something about some steps in order to provoke the other part.
Mm-hmm.
And also questions are a tool of provoking, but needs to be very well tied together in what's happening in the moment. So basically, in order to have like a very well put question, very neat and clean in terms of ecology of the relationship, it's not necessary to focus on the question, but to whatever is happening and whatever is poking between me and the customer. This is the point that I start this webinar, and
Yeah.
I need to clarify upon.
Definitely. The question is the catalyst, and what's more important is then immediately look over there at the client or the customer and what's the response? What's the response you observe, and what do you see? It's not what are they verbally telling you. Okay. And that we won't get into how to read behaviors, okay, because that would be a whole other webinar, but this is how do you provoke the response through your questions, and what intention are you designing, okay? And it is possible to do this all spontaneously, organically, and creatively in the moment, all right? I don't believe in giving you a list of the 25 most powerful questions because then you're not understanding what you're asking. Do you understand? You get what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll have lots of examples of kinds of questions. So what are we discovering? We're looking at an overview of the function and purpose of various types of questions as they relate to different phases of the transformational cycle. So I'm going to outline for you what is the basic cycle of transformation. When we map that out, then you'll know where your client is, and then you'll know where you can go in order to facilitate a whole process. A lot of people are just saying, I need to transform the moment. I need to transform the client. I need to evoke transformation, but they don't know what's happening or where the client is. They're looking for what's resonant. Oh, great, something sparks up, it's resonant. Then they say, great, now what are you going to do? And suddenly all that resonance collapses. It's because they're not aware that there is a sequence of phases in transformation. So that means there is a time and place for different kinds of questions. And that's what we're going to examine and look at. Why do certain questions work together, and why do others not work together? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We're going to look at ways to expand your vocabulary of questions so that you gain more precision in where you want to take the client, what you want to work with, how you want to work with it, how you want to explore. When you have a bigger vocabulary, when you have more flexibility, then you have more precision, okay? Because then you can really be flexible and match what's going on with your client. So you need to understand function and purpose, you need to have intention, and then you need to have vocabulary and flexibility, right? And I'll give you ways to expand your thinking and expand your vocabulary. So after this webinar, you can immediately go and do a little bit of homework for yourself and already write out 100 questions for yourself as stock questions. Then we're going to talk about how do you improve the timing of your questions, all right? And what's most important is the follow-up. How do you follow them up? Okay, great. You can ask a question that opens a nice door, but then how do you follow that up to keep the door open and really explore what's going on? I notice a lot of people just throw out one question, they'll get a nice resonant response, then they throw out another question, and nothing ties together, so they're really not taking the client on a journey of intention. It's just a random following. Again, this is about understand where you are in the transformational process or the transformational cycle. Understand what you intend to do. Understand what you're responding to. How are you guys doing with this? It might sound a bit abstract, but what's making sense to you already, or what does that provoke in you?
To me, it makes a lot of sense. What is a bit intriguing, and I'm really eager to learn more about this, is like the expansion of the vocabulary, because my thinking around the questioning, and I understand why you're saying, you need to expand the vocabulary to gain precision. But this, I mean, to me, it sounds a bit like, getting a bit more complex in the language, and I was like under the impression that I'm aiming for simplicity, for scarcity, for which is so I'm eager to see what expanding means and how this helps build precision.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And that I'll show you in the next slide when we look at what's the function of questions. It's through the function and intention that you need vocabulary. And I agree. Questions need to be direct and simple to get the most effective response. So I agree with you. I'm not leaning towards complexity. I'm actually leaning towards simplicity. Let's say you've got 3 primary colors: red, yellow, and blue. It's how you mix those colors that create the vocabulary, but you still keep it simple. I'm coming from 3 primary colors. Does that make sense? I'm not having a long list of crimson and scarlet and cerulean blue and violet and amethyst. I'm not trying to remember all the names of those colors. I'm just keeping 3 things primary, and then I can mix and match. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that's the greatest metaphor.
Troy, I have an expectations around questions in terms of intention and
Mm-hmm.
the right to pose questions.
Mm-hmm.
I have an issue with that. I feel like always need to make a statement before posing questions is like having permission to ask questions, and
Mm-hmm.
then who holds the power when. How do we cope with the powerful roles around questions, and then how do I play with expectations from the client when I start formulating a question? He is immediately looking at the vector of the arrow where I'm pointing with my question. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this needs to be a little bit standardized, if you want,
Okay.
to have like an ecology of coaching, asking questions, because you cannot play with his attention in all the directions, as you said, like throwing hand grenades, you know,
Right.
with questions. So maybe we can clarify around this.
Let's clarify that. Yeah. I'm gonna bring that back in a little bit when you're saying, so who holds the power? What do we mean by intention? Whose intention are we following? What's that protocol, ecology, etc.? Okay, I get it. I think what I want to look here is just what I'm doing on this next slide is what exactly is EED and what does it do? That might already start clarifying, okay? So EED stands for Emergent Essence Dynamics. And where this is coming from is no matter if you're coaching, leading, training, facilitating, working out conflicts, it doesn't matter. Everything happens in relationship. And this is what we're focused on, okay? Relationships follow a unique pattern, and it's a fractal pattern, meaning what happens in small ways happens in big ways. It's always the same pattern that's working itself out. This is driving people's behaviors and it's driving their issues. So if I'm leading a group, I'm looking at how are people in relationship to themselves and each other and with me and the environment. And then what are the patterns that are showing up? And when I capture those patterns and I can start shifting them around, the issues will start shifting. The people will start shifting because I'm coming from the level of root patterns. And that's what EED is focused on. All right. So this applies to anything to do with human dynamics. All right. And that's why it's a universal model that will apply to coaching, leadership, mediation, facilitation, healing, interpersonal relationships, management, anything, because everything has to do with the human dynamics. All right. Coaches want to transform people and transform businesses. Well, all of that is going to be rooted in some kind of a pattern that's going on. If we don't address patterns, all we're doing is covering up the symptoms of the problem, making people temporarily feel good, but then after a while, everything snaps back into place and nothing really changes. We have to address the root, meaning what patterns are we following, what patterns are driving us, okay? So this is a model designed to get underneath everything. Then you can add your coaching tools and your leadership tools and your mediation tools on top. EED helps you understand your tools better because you're applying them to these patterns, okay? So there's 3 ways we're working with these patterns. First, we focus on resilience before we deal with any transformation. We want to get everything and everyone in a resilient space because that already helps them let go of clinging to these patterns, all right? It makes them more fluid. We want to focus on what are the relationship dynamics so these patterns come to the surface. How do we do that? We focus on action and behavior. We don't focus on the stories people are telling us. We focus, how are they relating through the story? How are they relating to each other? How are they acting and reacting? We're looking at cause and effect, okay? With that said, this is why EED combines articulating what's happening and following it with questions. We're doing both equally. We're just not asking question after question after question, or we're not just naming, telling. We do a combination of both equally balanced. For everything I say, I invite a response. For every response I get, I can articulate more and then ask another question. So it's constantly balanced between articulation and questions. When we do that, when we establish the resilient space, we've got the dynamics going, we can then shift those patterns in a resilient space, meaning we're not forcing a transformation, we're actually transmuting. Patterns will transform themselves when in a resilient space, because we're not driven by fear, we're not clinging to anything, we are free to become whatever we want when we are resilient. That's the importance of the resilience. It's like a resilient space creates toggle mode on your phone, where then you can start switching your apps around, okay? When they're not in toggle mode, everything is very rigid and everything functions according to program. In order to access the core programming, we need to be in a resilient space so we're not rigid and clinging. Does this make sense, what I'm saying? Yeah, go ahead if you have questions. Did you have something to add, Adi? I noticed you got.
No, I was just saying it makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. I'm still curious on the how we get there.
Yeah,
but it makes a lot of sense when.
Okay. What I'm going to say is this is the one thing that, well, let's say two things that are missing from most approaches to transformation. There's an assumption maybe that people are resilient, but they're not actively working with it. They're in a way assuming it'll happen or they hope it happens. Okay. And they get upset when they meet resistance. Okay. Mm-hmm. The next thing is people don't even have an awareness on how to track patterns. They're more following what he said, what she said, this happened and then that happened, but they don't see it as a bigger picture of patterns or how these patterns start repeating themselves. And then they don't know how to break the patterns. And this is exactly what we're training all the time. How to recognize the pattern, how to break the pattern. Okay? Then things automatically shift themselves when the pattern can get reorganized. So those are two things I've noticed over my 15 years that seems to be missing. Some people intuit these patterns, other people don't, okay? But there is a logic and a reason behind everything. And there are very concrete ways to reveal patterns. Now, I'm not going to get into how you reveal the patterns in this webinar. That we talk about in other webinars, you know, and you can always say, hey, send me those webinars and I will do it, okay? What we're looking here is how are you designing your questions so that A, you're going to produce resilience, B, you can play with these patterns, all right? And there is a pattern to transformation. That's the one pattern I'm going to look at here most, okay? So you got to know what your questions are and what they're all about and what's the purpose of asking a question, okay? Now, in emergent essence dynamics, we don't ask questions to find out information. It's really rare that we're going to do that, okay? The main purpose is to invite a response from your client so that they are exploring their truth of the moment, not your truth, not anybody else's. And you are focusing them so that they're able to access a sense of truth, okay? This is what you're constantly doing. This is what's behind every question. You're inviting a response to explore the truth of the moment, okay? And you're coming from open fascination. You don't know what's the truth of the moment. All you can do is name what you see and then have them explore what's the truth in that, okay? We don't mean what's a fact and what's a lie. What we mean is what's my inner core truth here of what I'm experiencing. Does that make sense? Is that a good distinction? Okay. So first you want to look at, okay, what's my function? What's the function of the session? What's the function of the moment? So what's the task? Okay, and where are we now? So are we strategizing? Are we building vision? Are we exploring feelings and reactions? Are we mediating a conflict? Are we revealing a pattern? Are we building resilience? Like, what's the task of the moment? You need to decide on that. Am I, switching around perspectives? Am I playing with values? Am I, mining for values or creating a sense of purpose? That's what I mean by task, okay? And that's going to determine the kinds of questions you're asking. So you need to know, what's the task of the moment? What's the function of the moment? Then you got to look at, what's my intention? What do I want to be producing now? So if I'm going to look at life purpose, say with a client, well, then my intention is for them to get in touch with their core self, or with a larger picture of what's happening in their life. I really don't want them to just explore a random emotion. Does that make sense? I'm creating an intention. I know my function. Now I have an intention of what is it I want to evoke or spark up in the person. And then I need to know, where am I sending them? Okay, where am I pointing their awareness? All right, where am I pointing them to go? So if I know we're working on life purpose, I really want to get them, my intention is to get them in touch with their core self. Well, I'm not going to send them out on some random exploration of how shitty they are, or of how everything has gone wrong in their life. I want to look at, maybe what has fulfilled you most in your life before, or what has been a common thread throughout your life, what has been a common strength you've always carried. That is giving a direction of where I want to send them into their core self. Is this making sense, what I'm saying? And then I want to focus, meaning through my question, I have an intention, I'm sending them on a direction, but where do I want the response to come from? Okay, and an easy way is, do I want this to come from their head? Do I want it to come from their heart? Or do I want it to come from their body? I need to pinpoint the focus of where, not only what they're exploring, but where they're going to respond from in themselves, okay? So if I'm going to explore, what's a common strength that you've had in your life, I don't want them to sit there and scratch their head. I want them to maybe feel it through from their body. So they have a body memory of it, for example. Is this making sense, what I'm saying? We're going to get into focus a little bit later. Yeah, did you have something to comment on there, Cesar?
Yeah, I think from a didactic point of view, from a training point of view, we see it separately. But in the moment, I think we have to be very present.
Very present.
There with all these elements, yeah.
Yeah. And what I'll say is EED is constantly counterbalancing between what's going on in the head and what's going on in the body, what's going on in the heart. And we want to make sure that the client is accessing all those points and not favoring one place over another. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean by focus. So if I've asked 3 questions that have appealed to the head, I need to counterbalance that with what's going on in the sensations and the feelings, so that it's not only just concepts and ideas, okay? That's what's going to create a congruent truth of experience, okay? Then there is programming. With every question you ask, you are actually programming your client. Okay, so you're setting parameters for this exploration. You don't want them to just kind of jump around at random, okay? Because that's not going to fulfill your intention. You actually want to contain them in their exploration. Now, if the question doesn't take, they're going to go somewhere else anyways, and then you catch that and you follow through with wherever they go. But you want to set up your question so that they have no escape. You want to program them so that they do go searching instead of resisting. All right. Let me think if I can come up with an example here. Okay. So when I say, let's say we're talking about core strengths. Oh yeah, I've always been able to push through. I have perseverance. That's one of my core strengths. And then I could say, well, has that always worked for you? And he could say yes or no. So that's not good programming. What's my intention? I want them to get in touch with a core strength that brings out resilience. So then I'll say, how has that always worked for you? That's a different kind of programming. Do you understand? How has perseverance served you well? They can't escape that. If I say, well, did it serve you well? They could say no. Do you understand? So you want to contain the exploration. That's what I mean by programming. So function, intention, and direction is more about what you're designing. Focus and programming is how you language the question. All right? Mm-hmm. Then you want follow through. So wherever response you're going to get, that's going to determine the next question. So you keep following through your intention until the moment completely shows you a new direction. But follow through. And I'll show you what I mean by this map, the map of transformation. Okay. How you guys doing with that? I don't want it to sound too complicated, but it's more than just ask an open question, because it becomes too random. This is what's going to give you precision when you start thinking about function, intention, direction, focus, programming, and follow through. Any reactions here?
It sounds like a model, but it's not a waterfall model. It's like circular, and we can keep coming up in circles from follow-up to directions and focus and programming and intention and
that's right.
And refunctioning, because what's happening into the moment in the moment, it's like a new function of the relationship, and this proposes a new way of tasking things also between me and the client.
That's right.
Also,
when the function changes, then your intention, direction, and focus will all change, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yeah, it's like going through from little A agenda to big A agenda, and coming deeper and deeper with the client, because he's always will come up with a simple and surface problem and maybe solution diagnosis, right. And in the end we'll go exploring, and we need tools because we're like some miners, and sometimes we cannot go only with the 11 ICF competencies, which are practically mechanical, and I'm thinking about them more than thinking about the client, and I need a circular model, like organic and more easy to grasp model.
This is what will make it more organic. And let's say that, and it takes a little bit of time and practice to incorporate these 6 elements together, but after a while it becomes automatic, okay, with practice. But study your tools and get to know what's the function of this tool, what's the function of that tool. Then imagine the moment and say, okay, if I'm using this tool, here's what's happening in front of me. What's my intention now so I can use that tool, right? Then as you work with clients, you can practice direction and focus and programming, okay? Right? And then once you've seen this map I'm going to show you, then you'll have ideas about follow through, okay? So it's taken me, a while now this is very automatic to me. I'm extremely intentional with my questions. That does not mean I'm rigid. What this means is I'm far more precise, and I can nail the moment every time because of the way I'm asking the question. And it doesn't take a lot. for me to think about it. It comes out, okay? And yes, there are standard questions that I will ask. And then, but I can put slight variations on them depending on what's the focus, what's the direction, what's the intention, and who is my client, okay? So this is the next thing, is design. So what actually are you doing to design the question, and then how are you delivering it? And again, you're still always inviting the response from them, so they are exploring their truth of the moment. What does that mean? You have to be in response to each moment. You can't just look through a book and say, you know, what's stopping you? Or what's that like for you? Or, you know, it has to really tie into the moment. That's why we articulate what's going on, then follow with a question that invites their response to explore truth. So you have to be in the moment, over there with the client, so you can be in response to it and create the question from the moment, okay? What your question is going to do is it's just going to knock on a door. One question is a knock on the door. Now, even if you have an intention, a direction, and a focus, still let it go and be willing to be surprised with what shows up, because that's what you got to create from next, okay? And that's then, so whatever door opens, you need to fully explore the room that appears until a new door shows up. What I've seen a lot is, especially with these canned questions that a lot of people ask, it's just they knock on one door and then say, oh, okay. They don't even pay attention much to the response, and then they have their next clever question, and that's just knocking on another door. Oh, okay, interesting. And then I'm curious. They knock on another door, but they're not exploring any of the rooms. Does this make sense what I'm saying? So a lot of knocking, but not a lot of depth. So they just skim the surface. They might cover, you know, a lot of territory here, there, but they're not getting the full depth of the moment, of the experience. There are ways to, you knock on the door, it opens, now you got to stay there and follow through and really fully do an exploration of the room. Then what you're going to discover is, oh, there's another door in that room. Knock on it and discover, oh, there's a whole other room here. And it's like layers and layers and layers. When you are designing your questions well, that's how the process goes, okay? That's why follow-through is so important. Just because you could knock at the door and get a response, now you have to open that door and have them fully explore the room that's behind the door. So a lot of people talk about you got to use open questions. True, but not always true, okay? Open questions are exactly that. They create an opening. This is where you're doing an open exploration. You're doing an open discovery. You're expanding what's available in the moment, okay? But then there is a time to close things down. You've got to narrow things down, target what's going on, get your client to be very precise about what they're experiencing in the moment. So this is where closed questions actually become effective. It's, again, this has to do with intention. Am I opening something up, or am I narrowing something down with precision? That's going to determine the shape of my questions. What are you experiencing right now? How are you experiencing that? Those are open questions. It's going to open and expand. But then if the client's saying, well, I'm experiencing something, but I really don't know. Well, now I can come in with a closed question. Well, are you happy, sad, or angry? Do you like or not like what you're experiencing? You see, this is more black and white. It forces them to pick something. Then we can, okay, oh, so you're angry. What's it like to feel so angry? Now I can open it back up. So with EED, we're going to go back and forth between open and closed questions. And it depends, again, what's the purpose here? Am I opening up the experience or narrowing it down for precision? Does that make sense to you guys?
It makes sense. I'm just wondering, how within the moment, because when do you know it's time to narrow down? Because what I see here is maybe a threat to maybe going to maybe a leading kind of.
Right. Yeah.
Motion.
We don't want to do leading questions. If I'm going to do a leading question, I'd rather articulate what I see happening and then ask for their response, right? As opposed to trying to sneak them into forcing them down some direction. Okay. There's a big difference there, but I do get what you're saying. Keep going, Adia. Was there more that you wanted to add?
No. It's more, again, it makes sense to say, you open, you explore, you expand, and then you sometimes you need to close, you go precision and, just.
Your question will get answered in the next slide when I show you what's the cycle of transformation. Okay.
Good.
Because the cycle itself opens and then closes. Okay. And we're gonna make that very precise on what exactly is going on. There's also the question why. It's a very effective question, but more like a red hot chili pepper. It's you only use it at certain times, and you don't ask why. Well, you don't ask any questions to keep gathering information, because all you're going to get is more story, unless that's your intention to get the story so that you can find the patterns. Then you'll want them to tell you information, but it's pointless to gather information in order for you to solve something for them. Okay. You're taking then away their ability to transform themselves. And it'll just be a borrowed transformation, meaning you've done all the work for them, handed it over, and they have to adopt it. They don't own it. Okay. So no point in asking any question to gather information. But if you ask why at key moments, it's going to create investment in what they're exploring. Think of it like, why bother? Well, I want to work on this today. I want to explore, I don't know, my relationship to my best friend. Okay, why bother doing that? It's like, why is that important? Or how is that important to you? That's what we mean by why, okay? It can wake them up into really digging in and saying, yeah, how is this important to me? Okay. You could ask, how is that important to you? But if you want to be really powerful, I just sometimes say, why bother? Because it catches them off guard. Okay. You don't want to ask why for them to explain themselves, justify themselves, or defend themselves. Okay. So, because that's the negative effect of a why question. And here's an exception, and it's rare, if you want to see how they defend or justify or explain, if you want to look for that pattern of behavior, then yes, ask why. So you can see them in action, okay? But you don't ask why just to get more information. That's a very subtle thing, but is that clear? Again, it comes back to, what's my intention? Then I know what I'm asking. Go ahead, Cesar.
No. It's a totally different shift in paradigm. I was just gathering information, and at a certain point I was panicking because I didn't know what to do with all that information. But now it seems even lighter for me as a coach to just play with this frame of reference of the client, regardless of the story.
Yeah, regardless of the story. And in other webinars, I go through the different levels of truth, and the story is the most superficial and most rigid. It's the most difficult to transform. We've got to dig down into the resilient source of the person in order to change the story. So here's the other thing for designing your questions. Use their vocabulary. Speak their language. Draw from what they say, their perceptions, their metaphors, their choice of words, okay? Don't reinterpret their language, but use their language. Does this make sense? Okay. So if they say, well, I'm feeling all warm and fuzzy inside. Well, then I can say, so what's it like to feel so warm and fuzzy? It's that simple. Instead of me trying to say, oh, well, warm and fuzzy, that must mean that you're feeling so secure and confident. I don't need to do that reinterpretation, right? Use their language, okay? Other times, if you really want to get into the art of it, you can counter their language. Like if they're always speaking so eloquently and politely, maybe you want to get them a little rough and crude. Okay, and so you can come back at them with a question that's more rough and crude. But at first, learn their language, okay? The other thing I'll say is speak the language of their body centers, meaning the language of the head, the language of the heart, the language of the lower body. I'll get into that in a moment, okay? Okay, how you doing with this information? Doing okay? Okay.
Excellent.
So here's the sequence of transformation, what typically happens. So in every moment, something's going to spark up, okay? Let's say you notice the client starts smiling or their eyes light up, okay? So you can say that, hey, your eyes are lighting up. Then what you want to do is invite their response, okay? So you could be like, hey, what's happening? And whatever is happening, you want them to create relationship to that. Meaning you want them to create a connection to it. Hey, my eyes are lighting up. What's that like for me? What am I connecting to here? It's not about identify and know. It's more of what's it like when I light up? What does that feel like? What am I aware of? What's happening inside me? It's about creating a relationship to whatever's happening. They don't even need to name or know what's happening. It's just here. Connect them to whatever they're aware of and whatever they're experiencing, okay? A lot of times people say, oh, you're lighting up, so what does that mean? No, they haven't connected to it yet. They can't possibly draw meaning out of it. Do you understand? That's the next thing. Once they have a strong connection to whatever's happening, now they can discover what it's all about. They can learn from it. They can discover, hey, there's a resource in here. There's a possibility. There's something available here, okay? Hey, you're lit up. What does that mean? You know, they'll say, what do you mean? I didn't even know I was lighting up, so I have no idea. They've just disconnected from the moment, right? Your eyes are bright. What are you experiencing inside? I'm feeling hope. I'm feeling excited. What's it like to feel the excitement? Connect to the excitement. What are you enjoying in the excitement? Okay, what does that excitement bring you now? What's the strength you're feeling in yourself? See, now I've moved into the discovery and learning and resources, but I had to establish connection first, because otherwise they'll disconnect because I've skipped a step. All right, does this make sense? Then what we want to do is anchor and integrate this. All right, so I feel the excitement, I'm feeling like I'm in a creative flow. Okay, well, how is that flow happening? Where is it physically in you, if you could locate it? What's the sensation, so you could track it? What's the quality, meaning the special strength that's here? Oh, it's creativity and strength, confidence. Great. Let's anchor that. Let's get that in a body posture, okay? So they own it. They know it and they own it, okay? Then we can apply it. Where do you want to use this confidence and creativity? What does that reinforce in you? How much do you want to use this every day? Where? That's when we put them into action. Okay? If they haven't integrated it or anchored it, they won't actually be able to truly apply it because it's not completely connected, embedded in them. It's just an idea of confidence that they could sort of try and play with, as opposed to, I really feel the confidence in me. It's reinforced. I know what it's all about. So now I know where to use it, and I'm invested in using it. Does that make sense? So These are your main phases. And then something new will spark up again. Connect to it. Create relationship with it. Then discover what it is, what it contains, what's available. Then integrate it and anchor it, and then put them into action with it. And that's a repeating cycle. So this gives you clues on to follow through. Okay? Meaning you've got 4 basic steps to follow something up. I feel really angry. Great, that's the spark. Great, just connect to the anger. What's the pure energy of the anger? From there, what is it giving you? What's available in the anger? Oh, a lot of passion here, a lot of passion. Okay, let's anchor the passion. It's not about anger anymore. Now, where do you want to use that passion? Okay, what do you want to do? What are the possibilities? That would be expansion and integration. What are the possibilities? What's available here? Okay, now, where do you want to use that? Where do you want to apply it? A lot of times what people will say is, oh, I feel excited. Great, what can you do with that excitement? Don't know yet because I barely connected to it and I have no idea what that excitement is bringing me. Do you understand? And that's why a lot of people get the response, I don't know, because they've skipped steps here. So don't rush too soon into action. Spend time developing the moment through connection, expansion, and integration. Then move into action. And action will come quickly. How are you guys doing with this? Any questions there?
Maybe we can see it in action.
I know you want a demo.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's time for a demo, but I mean, I gave you sort of a walkthrough on possible questions and responses here. I can outline this in a little more detail here, okay? So this is there's 5 phases, 5th phase being actual action, but in developing a moment or an idea, there's 4 basic phases. You've got what's new, connect to it, expand it, integrate it. Okay, and then you can put it into action. But you can go again and again and again between whatever you're integrating, there's something new to connect with, expand, and integrate more. And that will build to a very invested action, okay? And this is partly what EED is based upon, is going again and again through this cycle. That this is how we develop the moment, okay? So basic question, what's here now? What's new? What's different? That's a standard question you can ask. And then for whatever shows up, you want them to create relationship with it. Either, okay, so what are you aware of here? What are you experiencing here? What's that taste like, smell like, feel like? What's the pure energy here? What is it giving you? What are you receiving from this, okay? Those are ways to create a relationship. Before they try to figure out what's there, they just get into relationship with it, okay? When they're in strong connection, then we can discover, okay, so what's available here? How is this a resource for you? What's the strength you're using? How does that feed your well-being? What's possible from here? What do you envision? What's the insight you're gaining now? What are you learning from this? Those are all expansion type questions, okay? Then when we move into integration, what we want to do is anchor whatever they're experiencing and aware of now. So you want them to take ownership. What are you taking away from this right now? Personalize it for yourself. Maybe they name it. Okay, yeah, this is my Leo the lion, I'm the king. Confidence. What are the key features of this? You know, well, I breathe deep, my shoulders are wide. We want to get a body center involved. What's the sensation of that confidence? What's a key posture or a gesture? What's the physicality going on here? Okay. What are they taking away from this experience? I can always trust myself. Well, how do you reinforce that? Well, by me just simply getting back in this posture, breathing deep, feeling the confidence and really enjoying it, it reinforces me. Okay.
Mhm.
So then we can get into, okay, now how do you want to use this? How do you want to apply it for whatever you're taking away? Where do you want to use it? What are some strategies here? Like, well, I can go take a walk every day. I can go use this in my conversations. I can stand in this posture before I go into the interview. For example, they'll come up with little ideas and strategies. And you want them to invest in it. What does this give you? How is it important? How much do you desire this? What, in the end, will this reinforce? So you're wanting to create meaning and purpose in whatever they're applying. And you want them to be well aware of what's the return they get, okay? So that it's not just, I'm Leo the lion, I'm confident, I'm enjoying this, so that I can speak more confidently to my boss. It's also having me believe in myself. And when I believe in myself, it doesn't matter what my boss thinks of me, right? That's more the meaning and the purpose, okay? What's the return on that? Well, then I'll be eye to eye with my boss. I won't feel like he's got such a higher status than me. I will bring my creativity. My boss will appreciate my creativity. Even if my boss rejects me, see, this is the testing part. Well, what if he does reject you? What if he says, no, I don't like your idea? Might collapse, might not. We have other webinars on how do you play with this testing process, but because this is, how does the action reinforce the inner resilience of them? Okay. So there needs to be desire and investment. They need to know what's the return on that investment and test it out so that they stick with it. And that's going to create an automatic accountability, okay, with themselves. You could create further accountability with them. Say, okay, so when you're going to go speak to your boss, how will I know? Or have them set up accountability with somebody else. Oh, you know what? I'm going to speak with my coworker after the meeting, or I'll tell my coworker that we're going to have a meeting. That's accountability. But I'll tell you, when you've gone through this phase of questioning, where you're building connection, expansion, integration, and then application, there will be what I call self-accountability. They will be far more accountable to themselves because you've taken them through this process. Now, look at all the kinds of questions you could ask here. This could be a map. What are you aware of? What are you experiencing? What's the energy here? What are you receiving from that? What's available? How is this a resource? What's the strength? How does that feed your well-being? What's possible? What do you see? What do you know? What are you learning? How do you take that into yourself? What are you owning here? How do you make that more personal? What are the features? What stands out most here? What's the body center you're most connected with? What are you taking away from this? How do you reinforce that? Now, how will you use it? In what ways? Why is that important? How is that important for you? What are you investing in? What's the meaning here for you? What do you get in return? How will you test that out? How will you hold yourself accountable? Do you see how I've got all these questions I can ask? Just say on something that sparked up, I feel excited. That's the spark, right? And you don't know where it's going to lead, but you're in constant response. How's this working for you?
It's working.
I find this amazing, honestly.
Okay, what's amazing about it for you? Let's narrow that down here. Yeah,
I have this feeling that I could have saved so much time. This does really look like a map.
It
and,
is.
Well, I'm still aware of the fact that you need to be in the moment. And somehow this looks so natural. I don't know how to say it differently.
It follows a natural, logical sequence of how things grow and expand, okay? Think of a plant. You have a seed. It needs to be nurtured with water, sunlight, so it germinates, okay? Then it needs to take root and grow, and then you can expose it to the wild animals, okay? right? It's going to bear fruit. Okay. But just because you've discovered a seed, you can't expect it to produce fruit immediately. Okay. There's a process of growth. And that's what these questions are about. Something new happens. So we've got to nurture that so it can germinate and activate, then grow some roots, and then it can bear fruit. Okay. And then, because it's a map, you can bounce around. Oh, well, if we're not getting a lot of discovery, it just means we need to strengthen the connection. If we're not getting a lot of integration, maybe we just need to go backwards and either connect and expand a little more, right? So you can bounce around here. It's not step 1, 2, 3, 4. It's from the new idea comes the connection. From the connection comes the expansion. From the expansion comes the integration. From the integration comes the action. Okay, so if you move from one to the next phase and it's not working, then start from the beginning or go back a step. So this allows it to be organic. Is this making sense? This is what's giving you the flexibility. So yeah, Ari, it is a map. And you're free to play around anywhere. That's why I say, where are you now? Where's the client? What's the intention? My intention is to get them in relationship with what showed up. Or my intention is to start anchoring what they've been talking about and experiencing, okay? Then you can create direction and focus, okay? What we're doing in EED, regardless of this, okay, is as we move through that transformational cycle, we want to keep a balance of awareness experience so that it's not too intellectual and it's not too experiential. It's both, okay? So when you're working with awareness, think of it, what's going on from the neck up. This is where I'm saying, where are you focusing the question? Are you focusing the question on their awareness, or are you focusing it on their experience? Do you want to hear their thoughts, beliefs, perceptions, observations, their intuition, what they see or hear, what they're dreaming of or envisioning, or what they're imagining? That's all about awareness, okay? You'll also get what's the concept, what's the philosophy, what's the strategy, okay? All of that will come too. Then you want to counterbalance that with experience, okay? For every thought comes a feeling. There's a sensation. There's an energy that they're experiencing or using. There's a whole physicality to the way they're processing and expressing themselves. They have movements. There's a posture. There's a gesture. And also, there's tastes and smells, okay? Taste and smell is more experiential. Seeing and hearing is more awareness-oriented, okay? So taste, smell, touch, that's experiential because it's tangible, right? So again, you can even just use this as a map for how do you get them connecting? How do you get them anchoring? Just balancing awareness and experience together. You may want to take a screenshot of that, you know, or when you get the recording. How are you guys doing with that? Again, these are ways to expand your vocabulary. Okay? So you can say, what are you aware of? Well, what do you mean, what am I aware of? Well, what are you thinking right now? Or what do you believe about that right now? Or when I say this, how do you perceive that? Or what are you observing in yourself right now? What's your intuition? So these are great keys for creating questions, okay? Same thing, like, well, what energy are you experiencing right now? What are you doing physically? How are you moving? What's your posture? How does it feel when you make that gesture, when you throw your fist in the air? What's the emotion? Okay? That again has you direct your focus. Is this towards experience or awareness? And if we're a lot in awareness, I got to counterbalance that with some experience. This is how you're going to create more of a congruent experience, more of a congruent truth. Plus, you're going to get deeper wisdom coming from the client because they're drawing from their whole body and their mind. Okay. to get new information. Here's another way to break down awareness experience. You think of the head center, the heart center, and the body center. They each have 3 functions. So as an exercise, you can take any question and then translate it into 3 different ways of asking the same question. Orient it towards the head, the heart, or the body. All right. And this is a great exercise to do as homework, okay, to help you expand vocabulary. So the head is all about thinking and perceiving, observing, conceiving of ideas, okay? The heart is more about being in connection, feeling and relating and flowing with things, okay? And the body is about movement, things that are physical and concrete. There's drive, there's action, okay? It's physical. So if I had a question, what's happening? That's a stock question. That could go anywhere, head, heart, or body. If I want to make it more specific, like what's happening in the head, I could ask, what are you thinking? If I wanted to go into the heart center so they get in touch with their feelings, I could say, what are you feeling right now? Or if I wanted them to get into their body, I could say, what are you experiencing physically right now? You see, so those are 3 ways to ask the same question, what's happening? Are you guys following me here? I can ask what's happening, and then I can see what's going to respond, the head, heart, or the body. Or if I really want to start directing and programming my client to go to their head or their body or their heart, I'll ask these questions instead. Does that make sense? So they have a reaction. So how do you react to that? I can ask that, but I can also be more specific and say, what do you think about that? What I just said. How does that feel to you, what I just said? Or how does that hit you, what I just said? Do you understand? It's a way of following up an articulation. I could say, wow, you look so disappointed right now. What are you thinking? Or what are you feeling? Or how does that hit you? Do you guys get that? Okay. Here's another one. They've got an impulse, something sparking up in them. So what's the idea you've got right now? Or I see at the start of some emotion. What's moving you right now? Or what's driving you? What do you want to physically do right now? What's your physical impulse? So impulses can happen in the head, the heart, and the body, right? Here's a question we ask a lot. What's possible? Well, what seems possible to you is going to take them to their head. What do you know is possible is going to take them here. What feels possible will bring them more into a relationship, feeling, emotional place. What grabs you as possible will take them more into drive and action. Do you see how the language, what grabs you, is actually physical? Okay? What's the flow of possibility is going to have them relate more from the heart space. What's the idea of possibility is going to lead them into the head space. How are you guys doing with that? Is that, yeah, go ahead.
I'm just thinking it's a very powerful map, and we have a much deeper responsibility to be in the moment with the client, because I didn't pay attention to this huge difference between a question from a coach that is centered in the head, heart, or body. So it can trigger a totally different perspective of the story, and
that's right.
Can put him in the cause or in the effect part of the story. Like
this will create cause and effect, and it'll open up congruency. Maybe your client is responding a lot from the head. If I ask the question, how's that hit you? They'll unconsciously go to the body. They might jump back to their head, but I can hold them in the body a little longer. Maybe they're avoiding feelings. Well, then I can go to body sensations first, and then they'll get into feelings, okay? Another way is if I want creative ideas to enter the head, I can focus a bit on the body and the heart and see then how it affects the head, okay? That if I play around with these three areas, I'll get a more congruent, truthful experience plus a more creative experience in the moment. And the client will have more of an expanded moment. Does that make sense? Yeah. You can also watch what are your habitual questions and start to see where you're naturally oriented, then do some work to rethink those questions. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Troy, just one, maybe it's a dumb question, but while I listen, it makes so much sense. And in the same time, I'm listening to you where you say, I need to counterbalance if the client is answering from the head, I need to go to the heart and the body so that I can get, the full picture and a congruent truth. Mm-hmm. My question to you is, apart from, being brilliant or, experimenting a lot, exercising, any tips of, because it does sound like as a coach, you do a lot of processing. Like, where does this come from? Is it from the head? I need to counterbalance with the heart. So how do you stay aware of, beyond what you're asking, where is it coming from the client? Because you see what I'm you need to be aware where is it coming from so that I can counterbalance with another question from a different angle. So how do you stay aware of this?
Yeah, I can give you a short answer on that. And what I'm going to say is this is exactly what we're training you on in the courses for 3 days at a time, right? That's what the whole intensive is about. The module 1 is all about reading the behaviors, reading the response, so you don't have to sit there and figure it out and analyze it. You actually see it coming at you. We train you on what do you look for, okay? So the other thing is, so the short answer is you watch what's happening. You listen to what's happening and even right down to language. Hey, what's your reaction to that? Well, I think maybe what might be going on. Okay, they're coming from their head. They just said, I think, right? You could say, so what's happening? Wow, that's amazing. I can't believe how that feels. Okay, now they're coming from probably body or heart. Right? So because there's a different sound in their voice. There's a different choice of words. We also teach you, like, watch. You can already start, you'll get good at tracking where's the source of the impulse. Is it coming from the head area, the upper body, or the lower body, like heart or gut? You'll actually see it in their posture, okay? And you can track it. We work a lot with that in module 2, where we work much more with the body center specifically. So, but you can already practice this on your own, right? Where you just start, instead of figuring out their response, you watch their response. Watch the client as if it's a movie. And one exercise you can practice is turn the sound off on the movie and watch the behaviors. Watch how they act. So if the client's sitting there doing this, scratching their head and talk, wink, 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 they're coming from the head. If they've got their hand on their chest, and wink, 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 well, they're probably coming from the heart center. They're making a fist and moving, they're probably coming from the body, somewhere in the body, right? From drive and action. Does that help you, Adi?
A lot. Thank you very much.
So the tip is pay less attention to the words. Don't worry about needing to figure things out. Watch the movie and watch what it shows you. Let things come at you, okay? And that, some people might find that easy. Other people find it very difficult, but that takes a rigorous training. And that's the whole reason to come and take module 1 right there is to discipline yourself to watch what's coming at you and not need to figure it all out, because it's through action, response, that it will figure everything out for you. It's through these actions and responses. And then through, intentional questions. Yeah. I'm hoping that sounds simple. So it takes a little training and discipline, and that's exactly why you would come and take an EED course, right? So.
Yeah, because if you only think of what is happening, you are trapped in the head. That's
Right.
why you need to exercise with your client in order to make the connection better.
That's right. So be less worried about what you're going to say. Pay attention to what they're doing, where they're coming from, what they're saying. That's how you speak the language of your client. And you start speaking the language of their body centers. You're learning that. You're adapting to them, okay? Again, why rush into transformation? Create relationship with the client, create a resilient space for them to be in, watch their patterns, play around with their patterns a bit, then you can start leading them around in different explorations, okay? Whatever you're doing, a simple thing is just keep balancing them between their awareness and their experience. And you'll hear if they're coming from awareness or experience, awareness, experience. You can send them towards awareness, experience. It's not like you have to favor one over the other. The best is that it's well balanced, okay? If you're leaning towards one side, have a conscious moment to lean towards the other side. It's like a dancer. They've got to work the left side and the right side equally in order, to be graceful in the dance. If you go back in the recording, take a screenshot of that simple map following the transformational cycle, connect, expand, integrate, and then apply. Know where you are in the map there. Know where the client is. And then keep being in response to the moment. That gives you options of where to send them, okay? And then see how they respond, where they respond, where do they go in the map. Sometimes the client will skip a step. Oh, I feel inspired. I'm going to go do this. Okay, great. Yeah, you can do it, but let's connect a little more to that inspiration. Let's integrate that inspiration a little bit more and then return to the action, okay? So don't create your questions from a book. Okay. Create your question from the moment using the what's happening with the client, and have an intention with the question. Meaning simply like, where could we possibly go from here? Connection, expansion, integration, action. That's simple intention right there. And then follow through and explore the room you're in. Okay. The client will naturally show you another door or another room. You don't have to keep searching for all these doors to knock on. And be willing to shift gears. Be willing to shift intention or strategy depending on what the moment is presenting you. Okay. And then there's more to say on that, because sometimes the client can hijack the moment, and then you know how to refocus them back into the room. That has more to do with fear and resistance. And there's other webinars to deal with that, or we deal with that in our courses. But this is what makes you flexible and adaptable, is when you're always willing to be surprised and you're always willing to shift gears or shift the intention according to the strength of the moment. If the client is showing you a strong new direction, follow it, see where it goes, explore that room. Okay. Most importantly, just don't rush into action too quickly. Spend time building connection and discovery and integration of whatever shows up. And I'm not saying it's a rule to learn to ask the same question 25 different ways. I'm just saying that you can take one question and spin it out into so many different variations, according to body center, according to awareness or experience, or 25 different people. You can ask the same question in 25 different ways, because each way will be basically the same question, but with a little different focus, a little different intention. That's the best way to expand vocabulary. And then on the opposite end of that, which I didn't put here on the slide, but sometimes asking the same simple question, what's that like for you now? What's that like for you now? What's happening now? What's happening now? What does that give you? Those real simple questions, married to what's happening in the moment, will feel different for the client every time, because you're connecting them to what's now happening. Okay? So it's more about variety of intention and focus rather than variety of language sometimes. Does that make sense? So there's a little bit of a paradox there, okay? But what you're really doing is you're matching the moment and following it through. If I could give you a simple summary of that, is learn to match the moment and follow it through with a natural cycle, a natural sequence. What are you guys taking away?
Well, it's very simple when you put it like this. It's like rebirth. I've learned a lot of models and structures, and I feel like I was hijacked, because
Oh, really?
this is very, very simple, and it comes with an ease as a coach. I've always thought that the coaching is very hard, because you have to do a lot of things, and you have to carry, and meanwhile the client was working by himself, and this is like, wow.
So what I'm hoping this does for you is that it gives you ways to track what's happening in the client, and it gives you options on how to create from the moment, okay? As opposed to memorizing a list of 100 questions. I mean, you can look in the glossary or the appendix of a coaching book, and you can have a list of 1,000 questions. But if you don't understand the function and intention of the question, then they're just random questions. So I'm saying learn the function and the intention. Then you can create whatever questions you want. If you know what you're looking at and looking for, it already becomes easier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it'll keep you more organic.
I also like this shift of intention, not shift in vocabulary and directions in terms of cognitive structures.
Yeah. Keep watching the moment. I mean, you're constantly in response to the moment. And then you can shape the moment, but you still are in response, okay? It's like playing a musical instrument. When you do really good coaching, facilitation, or mediation, you're not just playing the piano, but the piano's playing you. You're both playing each other, and something's getting created in the middle of it, okay? That's the ideal facilitation relationship. I don't know how that works as a metaphor, if it's good, but it's not about being in total control, but it's a co-creative process. And ultimately, the client is the one that walks away with the experience. So you're doing a clean facilitation of whatever's emerging, whatever's, to build the resilience so you can reorganize the patterns and have them anchor it, but they're the ones walking away with the patterns. You can't tell them what to reshape them as. Let the patterns reshape themselves, and you contain it so that it's a focused experience. Yeah. And there's where you'll get sustainable transformation. So, the question is, oh my God, how do I do that? Sounds like it's simple, but it's a lot. True. Simple. It can be simplified, but it does take some training and practice and a shift of our mindset, okay? Because a lot of times we're way too task-oriented, And we actually need to be more space-oriented and pattern-oriented, and some of us need to take more control, and some of us need to let go of control, because there's a counterbalance there too. So we train all of that in the very first module called Revealing Essence. And we've got courses coming up in Frankfurt, Paris, Munich, and Berlin in March and April. March 13th in Frankfurt, okay? And then in Munich, we've got March 27th and April 24th. And then in Berlin, we have it in June 12th. So those are opportunities to learn it. For you guys attending, and for those that signed up to receive the recording, I'm going to send you a promo code so you can get a discount off the course, save 15%. And then we have the advanced modules, Module 2, which deals with resistance and polarity, Module 3, which has lots of applications towards master coaching, building strategy, building vision, creating investment and action. So it gives you a lot more applications on what do you do with the resilience in the moment? How do you get down and really restructure the patterns to create something new? Then we have also our application courses where, how do you work with conflict directly? And how do you work with team dynamics and group facilitation? So the conflict course is coming up in June, and the facilitation course is coming up in November. All you need really is Module 1 to get the foundation. And then you can decide where you want to go from there. If you want to do more coaching context, or more leadership context, or more facilitation context, or conflict context. And we got a new webinar coming up in 2 weeks, March 11th. And this has to do with embodiment and presence, where you're cultivating a genuine presence in yourself and a genuine presence in the client, as well as creating that resilient space in between. And we'll look at that transformation cycle again, but this is in terms of how do you really embody that transformation in each phase. What are you taking, Adi, and any? Yeah, what are you taking away?
I was actually wondering whether this question is from integration, where is the response coming from? So I'm taking a lot of reflection, and honestly, I'm really grateful and thankful for attending this, because it's been, a bit eye-opening. I was worried about complexity. Mm-hmm. What I got is simplicity reinvented. I mean, this Excellent. Thing with the spin of a question, and I mean, it's not completely new, but when we looked at it from how can you take a simple question that we ask many times, mm-hmm. and think about it from from a head perspective, heart. I mean, this is honestly, it's pure gold. And what I also, I take, these learnings in the transformation cycle and the map and how to look at the question, together with, stop looking at questions from the books. Yeah. because I mean, it has to be much simpler, and match the moment. This is what I'm taking with me. Match the moment.
Great.
And really, once again, thank you. Pure gold. Honestly, I'm really thankful for attending.
That's awesome. If you have, go test this out, go try it out, go play with it, and if you have more questions, you can always send me an email, troy@essence-dynamics.com or info@essence-dynamics.com. Both will come to me. And feel free to, check out our website, follow us on Facebook, Twitter. I'm going to be more active on Twitter now. I'll be posting more like tips and practices and things like that. And so, and then, and come join another webinar. Always our website will have the registration link for the webinars. It'll show you what the next webinar is. We've got the whole schedule of courses. So I'm hoping, eventually to see you guys in a course, because that's where you get the real training, practice, and supervision, right? And these webinars are designed to introduce you to a concept and for you to play with it. And then if it's working for you and you really want to get to the depth and detail of it, that's why you'd need to take a course, right? And unfortunately, I'm not in Romania yet, but maybe one year I'll get there. But for now, you have to come into Europe, you know, into Germany or into Paris. Yeah. So, any final words?
I'm targeting Berlin in June.
Excellent. Okay, great. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love Berlin. I love it.
Okay. Thank you once again, Troy.
Thank you very much, Adi. Thank you, Cesar. And yeah, go ahead, Cesar. You wanted to say something?
No, just thank you again.
Thank you, and it's always a pleasure. And thank you to everyone also who's been listening to the recording, and join us next time.